This is the Graceful Atheist Podcast. Welcome to the Graceful Atheist Podcast. My name is David, and I am trying to be the Graceful Atheist. Please consider joining the Deconversion Anonymous Facebook group, where we are trying to build community. Arline, our community manager, is doing an amazing job there. And often on the Tuesday night after the podcast release, we have the guest from that week on for you to chat with. I wanted to give a brief anecdote of a conversation that I saw in the community for someone who I'm going to call G. G and I had exchanged emails over the past year or so, and she's become a major part of the community. She posted an expression of a bit of frustration about being the only non-believer around her. She's surrounded by believers. And it is the response of the community that was just amazing, of people saying, "You're not alone. I feel that way too." It's just incredible to watch. So if you feel like you're going through this by yourself, please consider joining the community. That's at facebook.com/groups/deconversion. Special thanks to Mike T for editing today's show. On to today's show. Our community manager, Arline, the graceful non-believer herself, is interviewing B, an Instagram personality who grew up homeschooled and didn't discover friendships outside of the church until his 30s. B has an Instagram account where he is breaking down the boundaries of purity culture, where he takes self-portrait pictures of himself in the nude. This is a transformative experience for B in overcoming the constraints of growing up within the purity culture. B's Instagram can be found at Happy in My Own Skin. That's Instagram.com/Happy in My Own Skin. One last note. B reached out to me and indicated that he had already established a relationship with Arline online, and he requested that Arline conduct this interview. I want to make it clear out there to you, listener, if me, David, if I am a bit too much, which I know I can be, and you have a connection to Arline, or you would just prefer, for any reason, Arline to do your interview, please still reach out to me. Indicate that. If you have a connection to Arline already, you can ask her. We're going to have Arline do more interviews, as many as she's willing to do as we go forward. Here is Arline interviewing B.
Hi, B. Welcome to the Graceful Atheist Podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So you and I met through some Instagram acquaintances, and I have really been looking forward to interviewing you. I want to hear your whole story. I've really enjoyed getting to know you over, I guess, the past few months. So usually where we start is tell me about your spiritual environment growing up.
Okay. Well, I grew up the youngest of 6 in an evangelical family. Yeah, there were a lot of us. I grew up on Focus on the Family, things like that. Like listening to Adventures in Odyssey over dinner every night, that kind of thing. Church every week, morning and evening. It was a fairly standard like evangelical upbringing. There wasn't anything really bananas about it. Maybe from the outside you would think that, but to me, like as evangelicalism and Christianity goes, like it was not super crazy, but it was definitely conservative Christianity. So I prayed the prayer of salvation, or whatever everyone called it something different, but I prayed that. I don't actually remember praying it.
Oh, wow.
I was young enough that I'm sure I did, but I don't specifically remember that, which is interesting.
That is interesting. So you were so young that you don't even remember it.
Right. And given the conversation now about what's taught in schools, and kids are too young to handle X, Y, and Z, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that when I think about that, it's interesting. Like I got it from the beginning to the point where I prayed that prayer at a young enough age that I can't remember it.
Yeah.
So that seems a little contradictory.
Yes, it's interesting what is perfectly acceptable to teach toddlers and preschoolers, but not the things that you shouldn't tell, elementary and middle schoolers.
Right.
Yep.
So, yeah, I was homeschooled,
Mm-hmm.
not because we were like separated. I was the only one of my siblings who was homeschooled, and it was because I really hated school. So that was like survival was
Mm-hmm.
homeschooling. So every grade except first and third grade, I was homeschooled. Third grade, I went to a Christian school.
Mm-hmm.
But so I got a lot of Abeka books and Bob Jones University books because that was
Yes.
largely what was available back then. Homeschooling was such a niche Christian thing at that point when I was a kid. I mean, my parents would have used that anyway, but like that's what there was.
Mm-hmm.
So I was very much immersed in all of that.
Bob Jones University has come up in a few different episodes. I was not familiar with it until people started telling their stories. But Abeka, I'm a homeschool mom, and it is still one of the
Oh yeah.
biggest sellers in homeschool curricula. We have not used it. Even as a Christian, I was like, absolutely not. I had never heard anything that made me think, this is what I would want for my kids. So you were homeschooled all the way up into middle school and high school?
Yep, all the way through high school. Did not go to college.
Okay.
Again, school is not my thing. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so that just I didn't want to end up there and just be miserable and waste a lot of money. So never did go to college, but um, a friend of mine who I met in youth group in high school um, ended up going to a college near here, and she joined up with a college ministry there, and she invited me to start hanging out with them, and it was nice. I did, they didn't care that I wasn't a student there.
Mm-hmm.
So I spent a lot of time with them for a number of years. I mean, 4 or 5 years.
And how was that experience?
I mean, it was a good. I was never a big like confident strike out and make friends person.
Mm-hmm.
So the church was always very safe because the church comes with a built-in social circle, which is one of the big draws of church. So
Absolutely.
that was always really comfortable, even though the church I grew up in a very, very small town. I'm still here. It's about 5,000 people. And I grew up in a very small church in a very small town. So like my age group when I was growing up was 3 people.
Mm.
So I didn't have a big friend group there. So that youth group was outside the church. But even with the church being that small, like it was a built-in social circle that I didn't have to work to find or maintain. And that college ministry kind of expanded that, but it was the same thing. Like it was already there. We already had that one thing in common that we could rally around.
Mm-hmm.
So it was, I mean, it was good in its time. It was good. For the person I was back then, it was good. I think that's how I would put it. For the person I was back then, it was good. I did make some good friends.
Where did you go to next after high school and in college?
I've stayed in my town. Like I said, not a strikeout person, so I like my town. I'm here. But I did when I was hanging out with that college ministry. I did break away from the church I grew up in because there was a church that a lot of my college ministry friends were going to. So for a few years, I did break away and go to that different church because it had a broader circle of people.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That I wanted to hang out with. I did eventually go back to the church I grew up in because it's 2 minutes from my house instead of 30 minutes. And I got tired of driving that far. And a lot of those friends that I made in the college ministry graduated and moved on. Most of them weren't from Freer. They were from somewhere else, and they graduated and moved somewhere else. So like all the friends I had made left.
Yeah.
And I have not talked to really any of them in years and years and years.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, then I just got into adulthood and was just kind of treading water, going to the church I grew up in. But the thing I realized eventually was that it had never really been real to me. I had grown up in it, and so everyone around me, it was real to the people around me. And I thought, it's real to everyone around me. It should be real to me, so I need to keep trying. Because if it's not real to me, then something's wrong with me. Because look at all these people who care about it. Why don't I care about it like they do? Why am I not feeling it like they do? So I'd spent my life doing that, like trying and trying and trying, and like it never broke through. No matter how much I tried, I would feel things like, worship music is good at manipulating emotion.
It's very powerful. Yes.
They know what they're doing with worship music. So there were things, I would feel things with a piece of music would hit me, and I would feel things. I'd be like, all right, that's cool. There's something there. But the next time I heard that song, it wouldn't work. The effect would wear off. And I think that's the kind of thing that started me thinking like, okay, maybe I need to, like, why am I doing this?
That's interesting. It's almost like a drug. Like your body starts getting used to it, so you need a little bit more. It doesn't hit the same.
Right. You develop a tolerance to it. Exactly. Yeah. That's a good way to put it. So eventually, I think it was around 30, and I'm a photographer, and I do like just a bunch of local community stuff in town. And the local library asked me to do some photography work for them. And through doing that, I ended up making 2 really good friends with a couple of the librarians there. They reached out and befriended me. And that changed a lot. Because they were really the first legitimately close friends I'd ever had outside of Christianity.
Yes.
I had never really gotten close with anyone outside of Christianity. And they're wonderful. They are still some of my very, very good friends. But like just spending time with them, having them invite me into their lives and want to spend time with me because they like me.
Yes.
There's no other motive, no other reason. They just we like this person. We want him in our lives. We want to get to know him. We want him to know us. It opened up my world a lot because I got to see the world through different eyes, from different perspective, and to see people who were good people living happy lives, capable of being complete human beings, completely outside this context that I had grown up in, where you couldn't do that without that context.
Yes.
You needed Jesus to be a complete human being.
Yes.
And to be happy. And yeah, that started changing me a lot. Slowly. It took a while. I move very slowly. I do everything slowly. Um, and I didn't realize that it was changing me at first. It took me a while to catch on. And the thing about it, looking back, the thing about it that gets me, that makes it seem more profound and makes the effect deeper, is that they weren't doing that on purpose. They weren't trying to evangelize me. They weren't trying to change me or do anything to me. They liked me the way I was. And that's so distinct from what you get in a church, where you form these relationships, but you're always trying to create something other than what there is. You're trying to make somebody into something else.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a profound realization of how nice it is just to have friends who want to be your friends.
Yes. It's validating, and it's like your whole self is accepted, you belong, you don't have to change anything. We're not looking for this new version of you. It's you're part of a community. You have friends, and yes, that means a lot to our hearts.
Right. You're not broken in need of fixing.
Mm-hmm.
You just are.
You
You
just
just
are.
are, and we are glad that you are. Like, that's just,
Mm-hmm.
that was really important. And that was I think that was a really significant turning point over a period of years.
Mm.
I mean, that was 10 years, about a decade.
So, B, what was next in your journey? You said that was about a decade ago?
Yeah, that started about a decade ago, with my world being opened up and mindset starting to change,
Hmm.
just being exposed to the world outside the church. Um, so yeah, I started realizing that I didn't really belong in the church. Like, it just was not the place for me. I didn't fit. It wasn't something that resonated with me. I was trying to cram a square peg into a round hole.
Hmm.
I've been doing that for 3+ decades, and I finally started to realize that maybe I didn't need to do that anymore. Um, so mentally, I started moving away from that, but I I have not told my family that I have left the faith. I still have
Okay.
not. Um, it's just, I don't feel like I'm ready for what that's going to be.
Hmm.
Um, because everyone else in my family is still very much in it.
Hmm.
I am the youngest of six, so I've got five siblings. They're all married. I have 19 nephews and nieces.
Wow.
Everyone is in it. So yeah, it'll be weird. It's a lot. I'm still figuring out who I am and where I'm going, right? It really hasn't been that long, relatively speaking, since I decided to move on. So yeah, I haven't told my family yet, and so I kept going to church to keep that up. And it took me a while to get to the point where I was like, I need to be out of this. But I kept going to church just to keep things as they were on the surface. And I was moving away from it in my head, but not
Hmm.
physically. But, and I think I have gotten the impression, I've talked to people, I think 2016 changed a lot of minds.
Yes.
And that is
Yes.
what really, I had been tiptoeing towards the door. I would
Hmm.
say, kind of edging towards the door, and 2016 got me walking full speed towards the door. Um, because, like I said, it is a conservative church,
Yes.
socially and politically,
Ah, yes.
and a lot of the people in the church, like a lot of evangelicalism, what was it, like 80%?
Yes.
They went full voice for Trump. And these are a lot of people that I had when I was younger, watched them condemn Bill Clinton
Yes.
so heartily for his character flaws. And then here comes Trump, who has much more glaring character flaws than Bill
Yes.
Clinton ever did. And they're not holding their noses and being like, we this is our better choice, but we don't like him. They're embracing him and celebrating him. And I'm sitting there going, did any of that really matter to you? Like, what about all these principles that you always claim to care about? You're putting them aside for the sake of political power.
Yes.
And political influence. How much of this stuff matters to you and how much of it doesn't? Like, I want to know now. So that really started pushing me out. And most of my family did the same thing. Most of my family supports Trump.
Oh, gotcha.
Some more vocally than others. And not all of them do. Yeah, I didn't know what to do with that. Like, that was just all these people I'd known for years.
It seems so obvious. Like, how can this person be who you're going to support? And even I was still a Christian in 2016, and I couldn't understand it. I couldn't see how you could worship Jesus and follow this. Like, I couldn't put it together. And I asked people. I didn't get any great answers, but like I couldn't see it. I understand.
It's frustrating because, I mean, the answers aren't flattering. The answers that make sense are not flattering.
Very good point.
A couple families in my church went so far as to organize what were termed patriot parades down Main Street of my town, with like cars driving up and down Main Street flying Trump flags, and like this very involved families in my church doing this. And I'm going, do you think about this? Like, do you think about how this reflects on your faith?
Yeah.
I don't think they do. If they did, I don't think they'd be so enthusiastic about it. But yeah, so that really started pushing me out. And then 2020 happened, and my family's church was one of the churches that was just not real interested in precautions.
You mean in terms of the pandemic?
Yeah. Yeah, it just wasn't. There were some people in the church, but largely the attitude was not one of caution. So they did shut down when everything shut down, because they meet in a public school building, so they don't have control over their facility.
Ah, yes.
So they did shut down. They opened up as soon as they possibly could, and they required masks when you entered and left, but when you were in the sanctuary, you didn't have to wear a mask. And I'm going, okay, we're all going to sit in the same room for an hour and a half, all singing and breathing and talking, and you're not. That's the place you're not requiring masks. Like, that makes no sense. So when the shutdown happened, that felt like a good break for me, a breaking point of like, no one's going to church right now. I'm not going back. It just felt like this really natural thing. So I didn't.
Yeah, and that's very common. Lots of people's stories are March 2020 was the last time I went, or sometime in 2020 was the last time I went to church.
Yeah, it worked really well. So, like I said, I still haven't told my family. So I tell them I'm watching online, which live streaming is the greatest thing that has ever happened. So I do, I have it, I turn it on in the background so I can be like minimally conversant about what happens in church.
Mm-hmm.
So every now and again, I'll hear things the pastor's saying and be like, no. But I have it on in the background, so I don't really listen unless it's a nutty enough sermon that I want to hear what he's going to say. Like the one on divorce a couple months ago. Yeah, that was bad. So yeah, I haven't been back to church in over 2 years, almost 2.5 years now.
Yeah.
Yeah, almost getting close to 2.5 years. That was a relief. Just making that choice, consciously making that choice to say, I'm not going back. I'm done. Even though I have the live stream on in the background on Sundays, it's not something I'm invested in. I'm not having to be present and go and try to care.
Mm-hmm.
I'm done with it for all practical purposes, and it was the biggest relief. And it's been great. best choice I ever made.
Where are you now in your spiritual journey? Like, have your beliefs changed, or just your like social and political beliefs changed, or spiritually? Where are you? At least now, of course, we're still all moving, but.
Yeah. No one's ever fixed.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not really sure. I mean, looking back, I tried my hardest to believe, but like it never felt like it sank in or clicked or whatever. I don't know, however you want to put it. So did I ever really believe? Like I don't know. Looking back, it's a weird thing to try to pin down. Now I feel free not to care.
Oh, nice. Mm-hmm.
Is there a God? I don't know. But more importantly to me, I don't really care. That doesn't feel like a topic I need to
Mm-hmm.
worry about. I don't know if I'm agnostic or atheist.
Mm-hmm.
Practically speaking, on a day-to-day level, I don't know that the distinction is that important to me. Whether there isn't a God or whether there is and he's just not around on a day-to-day basis, it feels like the same thing to me.
Mm-hmm. It doesn't practically matter.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Either way, I don't have to be concerned with the theoretical deity. So I don't really know how I would label myself. I don't know what I'd call myself. I don't know where I am.
Mm-hmm.
I am not a Christian, I can tell you that. And yeah, it is a relief to be able to say that.
Yes.
Yeah, it never fit, and I'm happy to know that I don't have to try to make it fit.
Yeah, you don't have to try to make it fit, and you don't have to have all the answers now.
Right.
I know for me, I found that being able to say, when people ask questions, which fewer people than I hoped would ask any questions, or have asked questions, but I can just be like, I don't know. I'm not sure yet. I haven't figured it all out. And that's okay. And
Yeah.
it's a nice feeling. It's freeing, it's relieving, like you said.
Right. You don't have to have the answer.
Mm-mm.
And you don't have to try to get other people to accept the answer.
Yes.
You can just exist and you can appreciate people for who they are.
Mm-hmm.
And you can just be.
You can just be. I love it. So B, you and I connected through a group of mutual friends on Instagram, and I started following you. And your profile that I follow, is very unique and intriguing and fabulous. It makes my day better. So I would like you, if you would like, to tell more about your Instagram presence and how did you get from, where you were to where you are on Instagram these days?
Yeah, that is a big question. So I think at least some of the people listening to this will not have seen my Instagram. So the Instagram account we are talking about is where I post photos of myself naked,
Yes.
which the people who have known me my whole life would be pretty shocked. Most of them, very few people in my real life know.
Even just in this, you've seemed like, when you were younger, struggling to fit in, to be part of a thing, to, yeah, having that kind of courage.
Right. Well, in body image and my relationship with my body has always been weird. I have a physical disability. It's fairly mild, but it makes a lot of my movements awkward. So that's something that changes how you look at yourself. And having grown up in the evangelical church and in purity culture, bodies are not good in that
Yes.
context, right?
We're inherently sinful. Yes.
Yes, bodies are. I'm trying to remember the term a friend used. Bodies are sin buckets, right?
Oh, wow.
So you're always having to fight against sin, and yeah, it was a combination of things that just made me feel weird in my body. And I mean, everything about purity culture is problematic, to say the least.
Yes.
So it gave me all of that gave me an odd relationship with my body and a bad relationship with bodies in general and anything to do with sex. And it made nudity feel inherently sexual.
Yes.
So it was always very uncomfortable. Nudity was very uncomfortable because it felt sexual, and anything that felt sexual felt sinful. So that was a lot of my life. And yeah, that was a lot of my life. Like I never wore shorts. I never went shirtless anywhere. Through adulthood, I did when I was a teenager, but yeah, like I stayed covered up because I felt like my body was awkward and nobody needed to see it, and also nudity is scary, right? Because
Yes.
you don't want to sin. Sin is bad. You'll go to hell. So that's why it's super weird that I ended up being naked online. But I have a longtime internet friend who I still have never met in person. I've known her for probably, again, actually over a decade now.
Oh,
And
wow.
when we met online, we were both evangelicals. And she got out several years before I did and went very much in the other direction. And I didn't know what to do with that. I actually muted her on Twitter for a while because I'm like, I can't. What is going on? This is too much.
It's scary. It can be very scary.
But we are still in contact. She's great. And a couple years ago, we were texting back and forth, and I don't even remember how it started. Honestly, I don't. But she started encouraging me to view my body differently, to view it as something good, as something worth seeing. And it took a while. It took a lot of work to start doing that, and it was terrifying at first. Yeah, I took a shirtless picture and sent it, and I was just like, what am I doing? No, this is not okay, right? Not okay. But I got more and more bold, and at first I was just doing it with my phone, but I'm a photographer. I have a nice camera. And I had been, for a while, I've been taking like headshot portraits of myself, which is nice. I like that.
Yeah.
And it was a nice change because for a long, long time, I judged selfies harshly. Like people who take a lot of selfies, why would you do that? So I did not take many selfies, but I started taking headshot portraits, and I was like, this is nice. Like, I like these. And eventually I got bold enough, I started expanding that into full portraits of myself, thanks to my friend's encouragement. And it was extremely awkward at first.
I imagine so,
I
yes.
did not know I can take pictures of other things, but taking pictures of me uncovered was just like, it was awkward and scary. And but it was good. And I knew I didn't want to stop. So I kept going, and the first time I got a picture that made me stop and go, wait a minute, I really like this picture. Like, that was a whole new feeling.
Wow,
I'd never
that's
felt that
awesome.
way. And I still remember that feeling very clearly of just I sat down and looked at that picture and went, I like how I look.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was a whole new feeling. It was revelatory. I guess the best way to put it, it was revelatory. So that was that encouraged me to keep going and keep taking pictures, and I did. But I was just taking them. I wasn't really sharing them anywhere except with my friend. And after a while, I was like, I really, really love these pictures. These pictures make me feel good. I don't want to keep hiding them, because they're just sitting here on my computer, on my phone. They're not doing anything. No one's seeing them. I like them enough that I don't want to hide them, but I can't just start putting them on my regular social media, because I do not have many people in my life who would be cool with that.
Yes.
So I encountered somebody on Instagram who was posting pictures and videos of herself, kind of reclaiming her body and her sexuality from purity culture. And I looked at her stuff and was like, wait, this is great. I love what she's doing. Maybe I should do this.
Wow.
So I started a conversation with her. She's awesome. She is wonderful. So engaging and welcoming, and happy to answer my questions and talk with me and listen to what I had to say. And after a little while of having conversations with her, I was like, yes, I want to do this. I want to put pictures of me on the internet, which I never would have predicted. Never in a million years. So that was November. I started my account in November.
Wow. So it has not been long.
No, it has not. It is, yeah, it was terrifying. The first one I put up was scary, because it's like, it's here. People can see it. People can see me. It was really scary. But I was surprised at how quickly that went away. And now, 9 months in, like, I don't give it a second thought when I post, which is amazing to me.
It's coming a long way.
Yeah, in a fairly short amount of time. And like I said, I'm a slow mover, so a lot of stuff has happened for me in a very relatively short amount of time. It's a whirlwind. I'm still processing and catching up with a lot of it. So yeah, it's been really good for me. Also, I have been, the thing that has really surprised me is what I've heard from other people, saying that my presence there has helped them. I did not expect that at all.
Yes.
And that is extremely meaningful to me, to hear that from people. It's so encouraging, and it blows me away every time somebody says something like that. It really blows me away. So yeah, and Instagram has been quite a thing for me. I do have some local friends now who are all in. Like they know everything that's going on here. I eventually got comfortable enough and figured out that I could tell some people that I was confident they would be happy for me and support what I'm doing and who I am now. And the thing I've realized since being on Instagram, I've gotten to connect with so many people and hear so many stories and have so many great conversations, like with you. But the thing I've realized is I'm extremely fortunate that I found a community outside the church before I left the church.
Yes.
And I've discovered that a lot of people do not get that. They end up leaving and they have to strike out and find the community after they leave, and that's so lonely. When you've left that ready-made community and just dive into a whole different world. And I'm just incredibly fortunate to have made those friends prior to leaving. So when I decided to leave, they were already there and already knew me. So those are the people that I have been able to tell about leaving the church and about my Instagram account. And it means so much to have that support locally. People like right here who I can talk to about this and who know what's going on and celebrate the ways I've changed.
Yes, you are absolutely right. A lot of people, there are many people who stay in the church as long as they possibly can because they don't have anywhere else to go. They don't have any other physical community, like in real life community. And so that is awesome that you had that beforehand so that then when you left, you're not all alone trying to tread water all by yourself.
Yeah, I am very fortunate.
Yes, yes. Speaking of being very fortunate, I have loved being able to get to know you, and I didn't know the online community existed, not just for deconversion, but just in general. I wasn't on Facebook when I deconverted. I wasn't on Instagram or anything, and it was very lonely. But since getting on, I don't love Facebook, but being on Facebook and being on
Nobody loves
Instagram,
Facebook.
I know it is a useful tool, but oof. But yeah, being online and just, yeah, made so many good friends, met so many people that understand your story. Because now your friends that you're friends with, were any of them ever religious before and have deconverted, or were they all just, it's just not a thing?
Mostly not. Yeah, one did, but not to the same degree. Um, so mostly not, and that is, yeah, that is the real importance of that online community that I didn't know existed either until I got on Instagram. And it's such a big community. It shocked me how deep it is. And yeah, I didn't find it till I got on Instagram, and then started connecting person by person, and one person led to another person, led to another person. And I don't know how far out I would have gotten 10 or 20 years ago before all of this was available. And I think there are a lot of people who would not make it out or would not be able to stay out if it weren't for the online community.
I at least found in real life, I met a few people who had never been religious. They can listen to you talk about the crazy things that you believed and did, but they're like, okay, well, that's interesting, but they have no, but then you meet people who've come out of it, even if you're a different denomination but they're like, yep, I did clown ministry, or I did, I was in puppets and handbells. That's what I did. Puppets
I
and
was
handbells.
just going to say puppets. That was my next
Yep.
one.
Puppets. I was puppets, and I did it, and I did handbells, and just the most bizarre thing. That's like, why? But they can understand. They've been part of
Right.
it. They can share. You can share.
It all seems normal when you're
Yes.
in it. When that's what you know.
Yep.
That's the world that you know. It seems normal, and then you get out and you look back at it and you go, that was not normal.
Yeah, we did a mission trip from Georgia to Montana, and we flew, but another family drove. They were doing like a tour of the United States to get to where we were, and they brought our handbell set, all like however many handbells we needed, so that for these people we could play handbell. Like, why was this important to bring across? I think we brought the puppets too. I can't remember, but like, it's just, yeah, things that are
Oh yeah,
already bizarre.
one of my sisters was in a um, handbell choir in
Yes,
college,
it
and
was.
they traveled to South America to do handbells in South America. Yeah, she went to a small Christian college, and that's what small Christian colleges do. Actually, thinking about my family, all of my siblings went to varying degrees of Christian colleges.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Hmm.
interesting. Yeah, handbells, classic.
Yes, all the things. Yeah, and so people who haven't been in that are like, that's interesting, but people who've been in it, there's that you have a connection, a strange
Vacation
connection.
Bible School.
Ooh. Oh my gosh, the songs, they're in here forever,
Like we
forever.
said, music is powerful,
It
especially with
is.
kids. That stuff sticks with
Yes,
you.
it
How
does.
many of us can sing VeggieTales songs
Oh yeah.
just like that?
Yep.
Right? That stuff
Oh man.
stays.
Yes. Yeah, it stays. I'm like, I knew of a Discord group. They all got together. I wasn't able to go, but they all got together to do like old CCM music, like a karaoke night. And they said it was both like partially re-traumatizing and just amazing and fabulous, and they loved it so much that they said they're going to do it again. So
That does kind of sound like fun.
yeah, it does sound like it could be a lot of fun.
Just a few weeks ago, my sister was around and she was doing some project, and she was playing music on a Bluetooth speaker, just a Spotify playlist, and a Toby Mac song popped up. And it was
Nice.
a song I loved. Toby Mac way back when. I listened to him all the time, and this was one of the songs I listened to over and over and over again. And it popped up, and I started listening to it then, and I was just like, no, I I do not like this anymore.
Yep.
I do not like any of this anymore.
Yes, it hits different. It hits different.
It's yeah, it's not. It's fun when you're in a context where you can poke fun at it,
Yes.
but I could not poke fun at it at that point.
Yep. And there may be a day when you can, but and if there's not, that's totally fine too. I have things that are similar. Yes. Is there anything that I did not ask you or that you wanted to discuss before we start to wrap up?
One thing, I can't believe I almost forgot this, but going way back to growing up, we took family vacations every summer. All 8 of us hopping in a van driving somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And one year we took a trip to Virginia and went to a taping of the 700 Club on our vacation.
Wow.
Yeah, that was interesting. I remember going to that. Another year, we took a vacation to Colorado, and we toured the Focus on the Family headquarters.
You guys were legit.
So so now it's funny because like I say that we did those things on vacation, and we
Mm.
often would go to a church on vacation. We just pick a local church and go, which is the weirdest thing to do. Like just picking a random church and showing up with 8 people. Like we don't know them. They don't know us. We're
Mm-hmm.
not coming back. We're never going to be there again. That was weird. But the strange thing is we did those Christian things, but we took a trip on the Colorado trip. We also toured the Coors Brewery. And in St. Louis, we toured the Budweiser Brewery. My parents don't drink. So like, it's just, looking back, I'm like, that is just a quite a variety of experiences.
Were they just fascinated by making beer?
I have absolutely no idea. I mean, it was fun. They were fun tours. I liked them, but putting those things together in my mind now, I don't know how I don't know how that decision process went, especially since my parents were absolutely no to alcohol. But let's go tour breweries. Oh, okay, cool.
All right.
I don't know.
One last question. Do you have any recommendations, books, podcasts, YouTube channels, any just that have helped you on your journey or that you just have learned a lot from on your journey?
Not really. Not with that kind of media. The thing that's helped me the most is connecting with people on Instagram.
I love it.
That's been what's helped me talk through things and learn things and hearing other experiences and getting other perspectives. I mean, it's like my librarian friends, right? They opened up my world, and it's the same kind of thing. And I think that's the most effective thing for me is talking to people directly. I mean, I love books. I love to read, but there aren't any like books or anything that I would say have really been monumental in that regard. It's really been connecting with people. There is one podcast that always I always enjoy, always makes me laugh. I've been listening to since it started. It's called "Go Home Bible, You're Drunk," and it's two former Christians, one who was a pastor for a long time, and they just talk about things from the Bible from an entirely different perspective, not reverence of like this is holy and we need to learn from this, but just going through the story and being like, okay, this is weird. This doesn't make sense. Why?
Yes.
Why is this? It's having people talk through the Bible from that mindset is cathartic. It's just
Yes.
it's nice not to have to take it seriously.
You see things you never saw before.
Right. And I don't I'm not like going to run out and start burning a Bible in the front yard or anything, but a lot of people take the Bible way too seriously and base their lives way too much off their interpretation of it, very specific interpretation of it. And it's just like, chill out. It's a book. It's a book. You can read it. You can point out, you can note the things that are ridiculous and don't make sense, and just leave it at that and have fun with it instead of needing it to be a holy document. So yes. that podcast has been a lot of fun for me to listen to.
It is a lot of fun. I've enjoyed it as well. Well, B, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I have really enjoyed this. I've been looking forward to it. And yeah, thank you so much for being on.
Thank you for having me. It's great. It's nice to get to have a whole conversation with you.
Yes, this was fun.
Final thoughts on the episode. Thank you to Arline, our community manager, for doing yet another amazing job interviewing. As I said at the top, if you would be more comfortable having Arline conduct an interview for you, please reach out to me, or if you are interacting with Arline already, reach out to her and we will make that happen. B's story indicates how destructive purity culture is. The standout line from this conversation, he was quoting his friend and he was calling bodies sin buckets. I think that encapsulates all of the problems of purity culture. B says that nudity to him was about sexuality and sexuality was about sin, and therefore his Instagram account of taking self-portraits in the nude is about breaking down that idea that bodies are bad in some way or another. And it is overcoming the purity culture that kept him bound for most of his adult life. I think another really intriguing aspect of B's story is that he befriends the librarians. These are the first non-church people that he has a real friendship with. They reach out to him and they are kind to him and they are good human beings. And this is against probably what he had always been told about secular people. I think it's really important to remember that the believers can be in such a deep bubble, and the rhetoric within that bubble is such that anyone outside of the bubble is not entirely human, that they are bad people in some way or another. And so it can be revelatory just to make a friend who isn't within the church and recognize the fullness of their humanity. Another aspect of B's story I think is really interesting is the community that he has experienced on Instagram. And I thought it was poignant that he said that he was lucky enough to have that community before he full-blown began to deconstruct and to walk away from Christianity. And recognizing how difficult that can be if you don't already have that community, how lonely and isolating that feels. And of course, Arline, who is our community manager, rightly pointed out that we are trying to build some community in the Facebook group. So please consider joining that and become a part of our community. You can find B's Instagram of his self-portraits at instagram.com/happyinmyown-skin. That's happy in my own skin. I want to thank B for being on the podcast, for literally being vulnerable, for sharing of himself and his story. Thank you, B, for being on the podcast. The Secular Grace thought of the week is about community. We as human beings have hardwired needs to belong to a group, to have connections to a community, to multiple people. It's not just a word. It is something that we desperately need. And as B rightly points out, that is one of the hardest things to do on this side of deconstruction and deconversion. My anecdote from the top of the show about G and what I witnessed in the community of the love the community showed and the caring and the empathy is exactly what I'm saying that we need as human beings. Again, if you're out there and you are beginning to question, or you've been deconverted for years and don't have the opportunity to be around like-minded people, please consider joining the Facebook community Deconversion Anonymous at facebook.com/groups/deconversion. The topic of purity culture will be revisited next week when I have Jenny McGrath on. Jenny is a counselor with a focus on recovering from purity culture. Jenny has a program called Embodied Sexuality, in which she takes particularly women, but everyone is included here, through the process of deconstructing purity culture and how that has affected them. The week after that, I talked to Adria. Adria is an expert in international development and education, and we deconstruct the audacity of going to another culture and telling that culture how to live. Be looking for both of those episodes. Until then, my name is David, and I am trying to be the graceful atheist. Join me and be graceful human beings. Time for the footnotes. The beat is called Waves from Mackay Beats. Links will be in the show notes. If you'd like to support the podcast, you can promote it on your social media. You can subscribe to it in your favorite podcast application, and you can rate and review it on podchaser.com. You can also support the podcast by clicking on the affiliate links for books on gracefulatheist.com. If you have podcast production experience and you would like to participate with the podcast, please get in touch with me. Have you gone through a faith transition and do you need to tell your story? Reach out. If you are a creator or work in the deconstruction, deconversion, or secular humanism spaces and would like to be on the podcast, just ask. If you'd like to financially support the podcast, there's links in the show notes. To find me, you can Google Graceful Atheist, you can Google Deconversion, you can Google Secular Grace, You can send me an email, gracefulatheist@gmail.com, or you can check out the website, gracefulatheist.com. My name is David, and I am trying to be the Graceful Atheist. Join me and be graceful human beings. This has been the Graceful Atheist Podcast.